All right, let's look at this Milo Manara book. This is, I think, my fifth Milo Manara video about his art and books this year. So I'm about halfway through this Le Opere series. After this, though, I'm going to take a brief pause so I can. I've started reading Pinocchio in Italian. I read in Italian every day, so Manara's been taking care of that for a while, but I'm going to take a brief pause and switch to Pinocchio mode. I'll actually look at the art in some of the early edition Pinocchios, which was immensely popular and went through multiple editions. So I want to see some of the earliest ones, how they looked. But anyways, let's get back to Milo Manara. This book, Volume 9 of the Opere, collects L'uomo di carta and Uomo delle nevi, which means the man of letters or the man of paper man. I think it means more like man of letters. And then L'uomo delle nevi, the man of the snow. Snowman? The snowman. It's about, well, we'll get to it. Anyways, the first one, I think if I remember from reading the introductions, these two came out in 1979 and 81, I want to say, but don't quote me on that. And the first one is, when I saw it, I love this era of Manara art, and the first thing I think of right away is Mobius. It just reminds me of his Blueberry comics, the classic Western, which I've read some of, and one of these days I want to get back and read through it all because it was incredible. One of my favorite, definitely one of my favorite Westerns, but just one of my favorite comics, period. And so this begins in somewhat similar mode. There's this young guy, there's this old guy. We don't know why they're kind of traveling together, and apparently the young guy has a sweetheart he's trying to get back to in the East Coast. I don't know why I don't remember. It doesn't matter. It's a reason to have an adventure. So they stumble around, and there's these guys from this fort. I guess they're U.S. That's a weird flag. I don't know what that flag. It's more like an Indonesian flag colors. This looks so much like an animated film with this kind of coloring, and I love the look of it. This is some of my favorite Manara era, I think. So they kind of have their fun. The cowboys, they abuse them, and then they agree to let the old man and the Native American woman travel together if they're chained together. I don't know. I don't understand this at all, but they just meet us back at the fort. We trust you, and you're chained together now. So they have to travel together, and then her name, by the way, is it's either White Rabbit or I think it's or. Either one is fine. Or Bud in the Wind. I think that's the way I saw it translated. And of course, Manara takes off her clothes pretty quick. And there's also, obviously there's this obvious kind of growing tension and romantic interest between the young man. Of course, between the old man and the woman, but between the young man and the woman, even though he has a sweetheart, she's thousands of miles away. And at first, it doesn't seem like this Native American woman speaks English or whatever they're talking, Italian, I guess. But apparently she does. She reveals it. Okay, and then this guy, this is, up to this point, I felt like I understood the tone of this book, but then you introduce this guy, and I felt like we entered a completely different type of comic, because he's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but it happens based on the rain, and when it rains, he goes wild. And yeah, at first it seems a little more like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but as they get into it, they kind of describe it. It's almost like more like the Incredible Hulk. His body seems to change. So I'm like, oh, this is a different type of Manara book than I was expecting. I thought it was going to be a straight Western, but yeah, some odd stuff. Now I could go along with, I'm sure there is some condition when it rains that somebody's personality just changes and they become like Mr. Hyde, but I don't know about like transforming your ability to get stronger and something else we'll see later on. So anyways, there's this other Indian who rides around backwards because it's like he does everything opposite. It's kind of like Bizarro. I was thinking about Bizarro because he's that guy in Superman comics that looks like he's like ice because he's like the opposite of Superman. So Superman's like flesh and blood. Bizarro is like a block of ice. So, is everything that Bizarro does and those types of characters, is that the opposite, or is that just something different? That's what that's what young readers have to ponder. Every young reader has to consider as they learn about Bizarro, or this Native American young man who does everything backwards, like riding his horse backwards. I mean, he's still going to a destination forward, right? So, anyways, they save him. He hides under the jacket, but because he's opposite man, he slaps them because he does the opposite of what he really means, which is he's thankful. And I think this scene is mainly to show what a gentle guy this guy is when there's no rain. But when there's rain, watch out. I just noticed there's like wild donkeys. I feel like Manara just had like this big block of space here. He's like, damn, I drew them really small in the background. I better put something in the foreground. Dragon? No. Let's just go with donkeys. I kind of barely even remember this character and what they were doing. I think they were just in there to tell him that there were Native Americans. I think her tribe back there. And so they go to them, and at first it seems like the woman might not say anything, but she says something, and she says, no, they helped me, let them go, blah, blah, blah. And she also reveals that she could have taken that chain off at any point. She just kept it on her wrist out of, I don't know why. Maybe she just wanted like an excuse to stay with them and travel with them. I don't know. So they arrive at this fort, and at this point I feel like we change books again. We get like a completely different storyline almost. But it's still, I enjoyed it. I'm kind of making fun of it, but it doesn't matter. It's just like we've entered this weird world where anything could happen on the next page. Guy goes and drinks. Seems like they're going to be friends, but then he says something. He's going to warn about this massacre of the tribe. I think they're Sioux, her tribe. So they grab her and him and show her butt because this is a Manara book. And then this kind of coloring, though, this almost subdued, looks so much like, to me, I associate it with early 1980s Marvel Comics, the newsprint. And when I get something like that, I mean, I haven't had real comics in, I don't even know the last time, like old comics, like back issues. I haven't had those in like 15, 20 years, I think. So I don't know exactly what they look like, but I just remember, even from that long ago, that certain eras comics, the coloring looked different. And to me, this looks like 1980s coloring. So a fight breaks out. Look at this panel. I mean, it's got to be like 50 or 100 people here. Somebody count this and tell me the number, because this feels like some kind of like a math test to estimate how many people are in this picture, and then they tell you the actual number. But I'm not going to count it because we have things to get through here. Oh, I got lost. So fight breaks out. She escapes, and I would think it'd be impossible for some person to escape, just on a horse out of a guarded fort where everybody has guns. I feel like they would shoot her or something. But anyways, these guys are going to get shot. As I didn't notice this. Wonderful shot, Manara. And they're going to be shot because they're traitors, blah, blah, blah. But all of a sudden, boom, lightning, rain, Dr. Jekyll becomes Mr. Hyde, Incredible Hulk. And this is where I was talking about it. It just gets kind of a little ridiculous because they shoot at him. And I think the implication is that they're close enough that they can hit him. It's not like they're missing him. And yeah, look, we have bullet holes puncturing. Okay, these ones on the shoulder we might pass off as, grazing him, but these ones in his chest, I don't know if I can really buy that he survived this. But anyways, he does, and they escape. And she finds all her massacred tribe, and then she sees him. She starts riding towards him, She gets off. Actually, I'm looking at this now, and I'm noticing things I didn't notice before. So first, he's standing here, and look at this panel. It's just like so simple. And then we see her in the distance on a horse, and she's barely like even drawn. Like we just get the outline of a person, but again, we can tell it's enough to be her far away. And then don't look ahead if you don't want a spoiler. We have a major spoiler here. She runs, bang! What happened? Did he shoot her? Why would he shoot her? But no, he didn't shoot her. Cornelia Bianca, White Rabbit. He runs toward her, and she says, "Goodbye, my man of letters," or man of letters. And then there's these other guys in the distance, and they said, like, "What happened? What'd you shoot?" And he says, "Nothing, just a Sioux Indian." So anyways, that was Man of Letters. The next one, I mentioned in my last review that it would be amazing to see Manara do a pure horror like story in the vein of something like H.P. Lovecraft. And this is probably, maybe my wish was granted. This is probably the closest we're going to get. Although I think the ending's, well, it's a bit maybe more optimistic than any H.P. Lovecraft story. But it begins in a similar way. Like there's an expedition up in the mountains in like 1930 or something. And there's this snowman who appears, and they're like, "Oh no, what is it?" There's this legend, snowman, blah, blah, blah. And then we cut back to London. I don't know if maybe this is based on a real story. That's possible. I don't remember reading that in the introduction, but maybe it's just similar to a lot of that genre was kind of popular in the 20s and 30s, those explorer memoirs. And maybe this is kind of like a generic mix of them. Or maybe it is a specific one. Who knows? This guy, though, he's back in London or something, and they're like, "We need to send you to explore and find out what this snowman is, man." So they send him, and he's like, "Sure." And I think in terms of design, with the look of this one, I didn't like this font. I don't like any of these. It looks like something that was added maybe more recently for this edition rather than the original. I don't know how they did fonts back in comics before computers, but I know it's possible, but it's just, I thought it was more work. And anyways, the guy heads off to Everest, towards Everest, I guess. I wasn't even paying attention. I was just like, he's in the mountains somewhere in Asia. This is a great shot. There's an avalanche, and it's fascinating because there's people at different levels of size. Like we're almost seeing 3 dissolves in a movie or something from different close-ups. Anyways, I thought it was amazing. And this guy looks like Kenneth Branagh. So he's saved after shooting his gun at one of the snowmen, but he's saved. And his art is just like off the wall. It looks so much like early heavy metal that these are just wonderful. I will say that this story, I think this is before people quite realized that Manara was like, you got to include beautiful women in this, because there's like hardly any women in this whole. This is like the least populated with women of Manara's books. So I think that's why earlier in the book, anytime we do see a woman as an extra, she's like very voluptuous and almost a Manara woman, whoever she may be, even some passerby on the street. But the rest of the book, there's really no women. This choice too, I don't know if this is a more recent thing that they redid, but this lettering is just ugly to me. It's a Greek font, and I have no idea why they used it. It just looks ugly and unreadable, too narrow. It kind of drags me out of things when I see stuff like that. I loved how, though, the handwritten fonts that he uses for the sound effects in this, they look like 3-dimensional creatures. There's one part in one of the other books where they overlap, and so the guy is here. He's in this hall of the Buddhas or something, and he looks at one of the faces, and it's his face. And he's like, "Oh shit, what's going on?" And this is just wonderful. He falls. He becomes Batman or something. I don't know. Something happens, he wakes up with the guy with the trash can on his head, and they take him outside and says like, "You can leave anytime." So he tries to leave, but every time he tries to leave, something happens, and he's like, "The only way I'm going to get through this if I'm unconscious. I have like some kind of brainwashing hypnosis keeping me in this monastery, and the only way I'm going to do it." So he drops a rock on his head, which I'd never really seen happen anywhere. But he's lucky he didn't give himself a concussion. But it does allow him to kind of fall through the doorway unconsciously and awake on the other side with a really bad headache. But he climbs down and he sees the snowman. But is it the snowman? Is it not, in fact, the other side of the coin, just the monks? And he realizes that he shot one of the monks that when he was shooting at the snowman. So he decides to repent and become a monk. And like 500 years pass, and he's writing. I also don't like this font. I feel like they must have added all these fonts more recently. I don't know why, but this does not seem like an original font from whenever this was, 1979 or 81. I don't like these handwritten fonts that are obviously not handwritten, but it just drags me out of the moment, I guess, for a story. So turns out he's a snowman too. That's the ending. He stays there forever. And I don't know how this story got out. It's rather remarkable, but we have it. So anyways, those are the two stories in this volume. And then in the back, we get these illustrations for L'Uccello del Sole, which I don't know what that means. What does that mean? I think this was a what do you call it? A novel, or like a light novel, maybe for teens or something. And Manara translated it. Or not translated it, he illustrated it. The Bird of the Sun. Okay, L'Uccello del Sole, the Bird of the Sun. And this is kind of I don't know what it is, like aqua tint, is that what it's called? Where he uses these just shades of darkness, and it's almost like seeing 3/4 of a completed Manara drawing. Like you get to see all the levels of stuff behind things. I don't know what this story was about, but apparently there was a hunchback. Clearly aimed at teens, this book. Who should play the role of the hunchback? Tell me in the comments below, if you're still watching for whatever reason. I would say I don't like this technique as much as, for example, the other two books in this. But it's kind of interesting to see. And sometimes, like the line work here is pretty incredible. I wonder if I can emulate something like this in Clip Studio Paint or Photoshop. And they look like almost sketches and really rough, but then you look close and like there's all these stairs. This must have taken him forever. Seems like a bit of a forced angle. This seems like something from a caption contest. Leave your caption in the comments below. But put it in quotes, otherwise I'll think you're telling me not to chop your hand off. I think they chopped his hand off. He becomes a tiger man, and that's the end. That's not the end. Yeah, I really don't know what the story of this little narrative is. But it goes all over the place, and nice. So that's the end of this Manara volume. I'll take a break now and look at Pinocchio next. Some different artists in their early interpretations of Pinocchio before it became a Disney fiasco. So see you there, and eventually I shall return to the Manara books as well. Bye.